I'm ready to slash and burn.
No quarter. I am going to be uncomfortable and all over you from start to finish.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Outside of the Box. I know everybody has been missing BattleBots dearly, and it comes back this week, so that's exciting. And for my guest today, I have somebody whose robot is going to be in that episode, Victor Soto from Rotator. So excited to have you back on the show.
Hi, Christine. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Last time I saw you was at filming.
Yeah,
so,
5 months ago.
yeah. It's been a little while. Like it both feels like it hasn't been that long, but at the same time, it feels like it's been forever. It's kind of a weird sensation.
Mm-hmm.
And we're already this deep into the airing of the show. So certainly a lot has happened. Now, Rotators only had 2 matches, but they couldn't be 2 more different fights. So we'll certainly talk about that, and then kind of your thoughts on the matches that are going to be upcoming. So that first fight, I really want to get, kind of a lot of context, because obviously, as we saw on TV prior to the match with Hydra, you were having a lot of issues with Rotator. And, it was unfortunate because I'm sure that after last year and kind of how everything happened with the Golden Bolt, because, I have to say, and I think I told you this last time, I personally, if there was any robot in that tournament that I was like, that's who's going to win, I really thought it was going to be Rotator. That was kind of my low-key prediction. And then glitch happened.
Yeah.
And it went the way that it did. So I'm sure it was really important to you to come back and just start the season off strong. So kind of talk about everything that happened leading up to that match, and obviously kind of how that went.
Sure. Yeah. So after, I think it was World Championship 6, they're probably calling it now.
Yes.
Which was when we were right before the Golden Bolt tournament. We decided to redesign the robot from the ground up. And it wasn't like I said, oh, let's just do everything all over again. It was basically, we wanted to fix an issue with the frame that we identified from the glitch fight, which was that we didn't have enough clearance between our blade and our frame. So then we basically sliced off our own bottom panel, and that's why the batteries came out. And I was very confused after the match because I didn't understand how the physics played out. But then once I learned it was our own blade that sheared 30 screws at once, I was like, okay, well, we need internal battery supports. We need to maybe add some clearance. So we added a little jog to the frame so there's more clearance. And while we were doing that, I found these other motors. They just happen to be the same motors that Hypershock and some other teams use. And on paper, I saw them. They're like, hey, these motors are smaller, they weigh less, they're less expensive, but they technically have more power than the ones we currently use. Let's go with that. And if we can do that, we can even lower the frame by a whole inch. We can make everything slightly smaller. So then one thing led to another. We're like, okay, well, let's just make a whole new frame. And then if you make the whole new frame, you have to make brand new armor and all that. The one thing that we didn't change was the plow that we used against Captain Shred Raider and the Bounty Hunters. So we still had 2 of those plows. So we kind of redesigned everything, but we still kept it with the constraints of, okay, make it fit the existing plows because they're still good. We don't want to remake those. They're big pieces of steel. And so we made a whole new rotator. It looks the same. It's just an inch shorter. Some eagle-eyed fans have identified that already, but you can't really tell from the outside. It looks identical. And one of the things that we were also playing with is the previous rotator. We've run brushless motors for the weapon since the very first season we had in 2016. And we've learned how to get them working, but these are, I call it easy mode brushless. It's sensorless brushless motors. So you just have a very basic speed controller, tell it to go, and the motor goes. But there's a few more tips and tricks to get it to go consistently. We finally got to the point where we're pretty consistent. But the thing that we learned is that we don't get full power right off of the gate with sensorless, we got to add these sensors to it. So then in doing so, we added new speed controllers that we hadn't really experienced before. And before we even shipped out Rotator to Vegas, the drive was awesome. Weapon was okay. We were doing spin up testing and we realized like, hey, like, why is our weapon spinning up slower than last year? Even though we should have technically 50% more power than last year and sensors. So it should be going like top speed 3 seconds. So why is it taking 7-8 seconds to spin up? We never got it figured out. So then we shipped it out. We said, well, we can pass safety with Rotator. Like it'll fight. It's just, you know, we're gonna have to dive, duck, and dodge all the dodgeball Ds until the weapon is up to speed. So when we get there, we passed safety right away. It was actually pretty straightforward because we had really organized the internals. Everything was really nice, brand new robot. So we learned a lot from the previous iterations. And then we were told what our first match was. We were like, okay, that was in 2 days. So he said, okay, well, we got 2 days to figure out how we can fix our spin up weapon issues. So we were basically experimenting in the test box like 12 hours like both those days. And before we even got to our first match, we had already burnt out 2 speed controllers and 1 motor, and the robot had caught fire in the arena because we were playing with these different settings that we weren't familiar with on the speed controller. And it was very stressful because we didn't really pay attention to the rest of the robot. We were trying to focus on the weapon. And when we were testing back at home in an open parking lot, the drive was solid, everything was great. But for some reason over there, it was a new radio system too. I got a new transmitter because I wanted to be able, one of the things with the Rotator, since it's invertible, every time it flips over, which it happens to do a lot, I have to mentally note that left is right and right is left and forward is back. So I mentally have to like do that swap and start driving backwards. So I wanted to have a controller that I could flip a switch, everything's reversed, and now left is left and right is right. New controller, new radio, so I can do that. It worked great. We get into the test box before, well, we couldn't figure out the motor issues. So we said, okay, well, we're just gonna have 1 motor spinning the blade for Hydra. Let's get in the test box and let's just do our functional so we can line up for the fight. We get in the test box and I noticed that the robot felt kind of twitchy. It was a little weird. And after a few moments, I realized like, oh, I see what's going on. Like there was a delay in the signal. Like I would tell it to go and it would take a second and it would start going. When I would tell it to stop, it would keep going. It would hit the walls of the test box. It's really small. And I'm there, I'm like, oh my God, like, okay, we're like already calling us to line up. We've been focusing on the weapons so much. We didn't notice that we were having radio issues here at the event because we didn't have issues back at home. First time using the new radio system in a little test box, and there's like a 1 to 2 second delay. So then we didn't really have enough time to fix it. So then I said, okay, well, let's go to the big test box. Let's just see if it magically goes away. I don't know. So we did the whole walk through the tunnel entrance segment. We high-fived the audience. Farouk did our intros, and then we get up into our starting squares, or like our driver podium, and we load the robot right next to the like just over your right shoulder where that guy's standing with a 3 minutes on the clock. There's the entrance. We put the robot down there. They close these little barriers. You turn on the robot, and then we walk over to our podium, and then the rest tell us, okay, like drive to your starting squares. When I try to drive Rotator to the starting square, we were on the red square. We were on the left-hand side. I said, go. When I saw the Rotator reach the red square, I stopped the signal, and the Rotator just kept going, and it basically hit the wall right under that 3-minute clock. And I was like, I've had my hands off the transmitter for about 2 seconds now, and it just kept going. I was like, this is really bad. So when the robotic voice said, red team ready, I actually said no, and I didn't hit the button. It's the first time we've ever done that. And I told the refs, like, hey, like, is there a way we can get a postponement? I think this is like the middle of the second section of filming, so it was like late afternoon. And after some deliberation, Jake accepted it. And they said, okay, you get a postponement, try to fix this. We're gonna run 2 more matches, be ready in 2 matches. So we rolled back out. Luckily, the audience was very supportive. They didn't boo us or anything. And we went to the side of the tent there, and it became that's where they started doing some of the background filming that they showed in the episode, where we basically scattered. The whole team went throughout the pits, and they said, like, anybody know what could be the problem? I gave them the model number and the mark of the radio, the transmitter, the receiver. Said, anybody have experience with this make and model? Have you ever seen this? What do you recommend? And so many guys came to our aid. Like, we got some help from the Ribot team, from Shatter, from Endgame. It was really awesome because we tried everything we could under the sun to get the radio to work. We opened up the armor panels, and we actually stuck out the antennas outside of the robot. So we had like wires hanging out so that we could get a better signal. That didn't help. We got an external antenna from Adam from Shatter, and we like just threaded it on to the transmitter. And then one of the Endgame guys had to show us how to program it to use that external antenna, because it's so complicated nowadays with all these inbuilt settings and everything. And I would basically walk away like 30 feet, and I would try to run the motors, and my team would tell me like, yes, it's moving, no, it's moving. And we were trying to see, like, did it go when we tell it to go? Would it stop when we tell it to stop? And it was still bad. And after 2 matches, we had done everything we could. Producers come back out and they said, okay, you either fight or you forfeit. What do you want to do? And I said, well, I'm not forfeiting. Let's fight. So we go and do our tunnel entrance again. High five the audience. Farouk does our intro, the whole routine, and the lights turn green. And in my mind, I'm like, this is not going to be good. I hate to say it, but I know it's going to happen, because you have to really be on your game to fight Hydra and Jake, because he's such a good driver with Hydra, and he's got a really good reaction time with that flipping arm, and he's got the skirts everywhere. He's got the big plow in the front, and it's like, I got to drive well to avoid the flipping arm and try to get to the sides or get underneath them, and nothing worked out. So it basically went how I expected. It was very frustrating because we tried everything we could and we couldn't get it to work. But it was funny because in the match, there were a couple of times where Jake inadvertently drove up our forks, and we somehow got under Hydra like 2 or 3 times. And we went blade high, which a lot of people were questioning, hey, why did you go blade high? That doesn't make any sense. I knew that Jake's armor was going to be basically impenetrable to our blade, because it's the same material. I think they face hardened weld it. So we had seen the Ribbit fight against them, I think it was a year before or 2 years before that. And we knew, okay, we go blade low, we're just going to be jumping around, skiving, deflecting off of their armor. But they don't have a lot of armor high up. And we had redesigned, since the frame is lower now, we can aim the top blade lower, and we could actually hit the top parts of Hydra. And another thing was, if we can get underneath with the forks and we could spin in place while we're underneath them, then we can get the underside of the robot with the top blade. But couldn't capitalize it because I didn't have any control on the robot.
Yeah, and it was very unfortunate. I think even Jake, when I talked to him about that match, I think he was disappointed. Obviously, I'm sure he was happy to get a win, but you want to fight your opponent at their best, and like, you want to know that you beat them. Not having all of those problems. So, it was unfortunate. And there was a great deal of TV magic for those that, watching on TV. It didn't seem like it was that big of a thing, but it sounds like it was a lot more involved kind of leading up to it.
Yeah, I know Jake was a great sport about it. He gave us the time we needed. Obviously, he wasn't happy about it, but we weren't happy about it either.
Yeah.
We wanted to try to put a good match. And by the time we went to fight, we actually ended up being the last fight of the second session. And I don't know if you could tell on TV, but when they started interviewing Jake, like, as soon as the match ended, like, audience was already like beelining to the door, because it was like past time. Like, we had pushed it to the very brink. So it was pretty annoying that happened, and frustrating that we couldn't get it to work. But after that match, we were like, well, what are we going to do now? Like, we thought we just had a weapon issue, but now we have a weapon and a radio issue. And so luckily, we got a lot of support from some of the other teams, and again, great sportsmanship from everyone. And we found out that it wasn't really anything to do with the controller or the transmitter. It was on the receiving end, the receiver, and nobody was familiar with the model we were using. But the make, it was a very popular make, and everyone used that a receiver from that company, but it wasn't that model. So I ended up getting a receiver from another team that was same brand, but a different model. And honestly, that basically fixed everything. But we did a lot of testing. We were in the test box all the time. We became very good friends with the test box operators, and we learned right away that like 11:50 p.m. there's a padlock on the test box. You will not be able to get in. You have to wait until like 6 a.m. the next day or 7 a.m. but we were testing nonstop, making sure that the radio issue went away, because then we were 0-1, and then we were fighting Jackpot next.
Right, exactly. Which, is definitely can be a challenge. I mean, before this season, the setup was a little bit different, and they didn't get a lot of fights. That it was usually like 2 fights per season, I think they were getting, but obviously they've been very impressive. And the interesting thing that I had noted about prior to that match is they're talking about what you had mentioned about the robot still not being 100%. And Jeff had mentioned that Jackpot and Rotator use the same motors and things like that. And I was like, well, that sounds kind of scary, because Jackpot seems to be fully functional and Rotator may be having some issues still. So I was like, I'm not really sure how this is going to go. And then you came out and just walloped them. And I was like, well, this is very exciting to see. I'm sure you felt really good about that.
Oh, yeah, we were thrilled, because we did a lot of work to get up to that point, fix the radio issues. I was finally able to drive. That was really made me happy. Like it drove. We tweaked some things on the drivetrain between last season and this season, and it was obvious to me the difference. Basically, Rotator drove like a dream in that match. Like everything I wanted it to do, it did. Right when I wanted it to do it, it was awesome. Unfortunately, we still didn't get the weapon figured out. We were still, I think by that point, we had burnt out 2 weapon motors and 2 speed controllers just from testing, not even from the fights. So we were already down like a third of our spares just because we were still messing around with things. And so we said, okay, we're going to go again against Jackpot, but with only 1 weapon motor. And then I told my weapon operator, okay, this time just don't turn off the weapon, because in the first match, the radio that had the issues is only the drivetrain radio. The weapon radio was fine, but since we were flopping around in the air, Hydra was like hitting us against the ceiling a couple of times, the weapon operator kept the blade off, and we didn't really have enough time to turn it back on because Jake was smothering us. So that this match, I said, Carl, just turn it on, leave it on, let's see what happens. If we're airborne, just leave it on, let's just see. Because we got a really good, even though we lost against Hydra, for me it was like a really pretty robust reliability test on Rotator, because at the end, I think there were like 4 or 5 10 to 15 foot drops, and everything was still fully functional. It was just the wheel hubs had gone a little bent, but those are like 1/8 inch aluminum, so that's expected, and everything was fully functional. It was just we couldn't get the good drive. So we said, okay, well, we should be really solid. We were really nervous about Jackpot because last year, or no, not last year, I think it was 2 years ago, when we fought them, they hit really hard, and they're probably the first robot that not only cut through our front 1/4 inch steel armor, but they cut through the aluminum frame behind it also. And it almost cut all the way through to the point where like I would have had to swap out the whole frame component. And they only lost because it didn't have the self-rider. They were still fully functional at the end of the match. So we had some huge hits, and Jackpot wasn't dead. They got flipped over. So we said, well, we saw they had a self-rider this time for our match. We said, okay, they're not going to go down easy. And then obviously they would come up to us and they're like, hey, how you guys going? Like, how you guys figured out your weapon issues? And we're like, yeah, everything's fine. We got it full 100%. You guys are going down. trying to sound confident, but in the background we're all screaming like, we can't get 2 motors to spin. So again, we went in with 1 motor, 1 censored motor, but it was pretty incredible that 1 censored motor really did the job, and it just did not stop hitting. So it was pretty dominant fight. It pretty much went the way I expected it, that I wanted it to go. Like what I expected was that they were gonna hit us in the front, because they have so much reach. And again, they cut through our armor twice in the front, so it took us like a week to fix that front armor plate. But we were really happy we were able to put the robot where we wanted, got the wheels, and I think at the end they were still fully functional, but we had shaved off so much of their wheels that they just couldn't drive anymore, and they got high centered. So it was a great match for us. It was total victory, and we said, hey, like, we may not have to figure out how to get 2 motors to run on the weapon. One may be good enough, but the back of my mind, I was always like, we designed it for 2 motors. Can you imagine if we would have had double the weapon power? Because we definitely had a lot of battery overhead. Batteries after the match were like an 80% charge. So it was designed for running two heavy duty motors, but we just couldn't get it to work. So we were just happy we got the win, and we said, okay, well, we're not at 100% with the robot, but I think we're competitive with this robot.
Yeah, which is great. Obviously you have a match that's going to be upcoming on the next episode, which I think is one of those like fans' dream matches, going up against Bloodsport, because 2 big horizontal robots, and they certainly have a lot of power behind their weapon as well. What was you got the schedules ahead of time, which I think everybody loved.
Yeah, that was great.
Yeah, what was like your thought about, okay, we're fighting Bloodsport, how do you strategize for that?
Yeah, that one's tough because Bloodsport's really good robots, and doesn't seem like they have a lot of armor, but their entire frame is made out of billet aluminum. So you would have to cut through like 1 to 2 inches of aluminum to get to anything important inside. Then they have even more weapon power than us, because I think they can run up to 70-pound blades. Rotator's blades max out at 45 pounds, and they definitely have more reach, more moment of inertia, so they definitely have more energy going into their hits. And we saw their fight against Copperhead, and we said, okay, like, everyone's first fight is always like a test run. That's what historically we're used to losing our first match, which I hate to say, in BattleBots, because we're always learning new things, but we always tend to bounce back in our second fight. And so we said, okay, well, like, there were some gremlins obviously in Bloodsport in that first match. They kind of self-combusted, and then they fought Gigabyte. And I said, okay, like, on paper, like, I don't see any way Bloodsport can win this, because Gigabyte's like a 360-degree wedge. I feel like Bloodsport's just going to get tipped over, which they did, but then Gigabyte, I guess, accidentally helped them self-right. And then there was a huge collision that really went in Bloodsport's favor and ended up KOing Gigabyte, which was really a surprise to us. And we said, okay, well, we gotta fight the robot that KO'd Gigabyte. This is gonna be tough. And they could run plows, they can run forks just like us. The one thing they couldn't do is lower their blade. We know the height of their blade. So we started thinking, okay, how are we gonna counter this? And we spent quite a bit of time thinking about what was the right strategy for Bloodsport. I don't know how much to divulge here before the episode airs, but
probably not too much. But yeah, I mean, like, like from a strategy perspective, that's completely fine.
Sure, yeah. So you'll see that we'll go into the episode we went with our plow, the same plow we use against Shred Raider, and may have been Shred Raider twice. I think we've used that plow only twice, and it's gone unscathed. So we said, okay, we're going to go with the plow. We're obviously going to go with the low blade. And what we did before the match, which was a special thing we hadn't done before, was the front arm angled panel on Rotator that has the Rotator logo is quarter inch AR400. And there's like a solid 1 inch AR400 beam in the front. I call it the nose of the robot. And I said, okay, this is probably the strongest part of the robot, but we saw how hard Bloodsport was hitting, and we decided, okay, let's weld some additional panels behind the armor panel, so you won't be able to see it on TV. But we were able to borrow. We were to take, never give it back. I think it was 3/16 inch AR500. Cut it to size, and we welded it on the inside of that front rotator panel to get it extra beefy. And we said, okay, we're going to start with the plow. We're going to see how that goes. Eventually, we're going to have to turn around and hit him with the blade. But if things go wrong, we're just going to start kamikazing with the nose and just see what happens. And so that became the strategy going into the Bloodsport match.
I
and
mean,
hoping
that
for the best.
sounds like a pretty solid strategy.
Yeah.
We'll see how that plays out.
Yeah.
And then interestingly enough, I was like, were they just like, we're just going to give Rotator both of the Waiachi robots, you know,
Yeah.
fighting Fusion in the end, which, you know, that's, I don't want to say that fighting Fusion was ever easy, but I mean,
No, especially this year.
Yeah, in past seasons, you know, it's just that there, you know, there were a lot of problems with that robot, and obviously this season it's done much better, especially against Witch Doctor, which is like, that was just one heck of a fight. That probably is one of my favorite fights so far this season.
That was an amazing fight. Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, after seeing that, is that like, oh.
Yeah. So this was the most stressful season I've ever had in BattleBots, just because we started off really poorly with the radio issues. Couldn't figure out the weapon issue. We were running on 50% power. It was literally 50% power, one motor out of two. And going into the Bloodsport match, we still hadn't figured it out. So we went in with, so what we did was the transmission was designed to take two motors. We couldn't change it to just one motor because we would have to get a shorter belt, change tensioners, all that stuff. That's too much to do. So one of the burnt out motors we just clipped off the wires and put it in there as an idler pulley. So we had I called it the most expensive idler pulley in Rotator, just taking up room there so we wouldn't have to change belts and anything. So so we saw the schedule. We're like, okay, we're now 1-1. Like, we fixed the radio issue. We're gonna have to fight Bloodsport with 50% power. Hopefully the armor and the strategy can get us a win. And then we saw that Fusion just looked absolutely like ferocious this year. They completely tore apart Witch Doctor, and I really thought they were going to get the win until the very end. And it was just, oh wow, like, so impressive. They've definitely improved, like Reese definitely improved the reliability in that robot, and it's hitting, both spinners are hitting really hard. It's super impressive. And so we look at the schedule and we're like, oof, like, okay, like, no easy matches. Like, they're all hard matches, and we feel like we're really on the back step here with the issues we're having with the weapon. So it's just so stressful. So every day we were always trying to balance out, okay, get ready for the match, and then when we're not getting ready for the match, let's test out getting two weapons or two motors running again. And we almost got late to the Jackpot match because we were messing around with two motors, and then all of a sudden the schedule changes, and hey, you got to go line up. It's like, we got to go swap out the motor. We got to take out a speed controller because we don't want to have additional electronics that aren't going to work or that aren't going to do anything because they can get damaged. So it would take like an hour to revert everything back. We're almost always late to our matches because we're always tinkering, trying to get the weapon 100%. And so every day was really like a 16-hour day. And so it was really, really stressful. Like, man, like, we know we're not at 100%, and it felt like the redesign should have made things better this year, and we kind of got a little worse. Like, in theory, the second match was really promising, but we're not getting any good, like, easy matches. Like, they're all top hard hitting contenders. So we're like, okay, well, at least we have some spare armor. Let's see what survives.
Yes. I mean, I think, you know, like, reducing the field to 50, you know, some people might not think that would make that big of a difference. I really think that it did. I think it shows because there's so, like, little difference between the people who are here and the people who are here. I mean, everybody's really high level. So it was very competitive this season.
Yeah, every year the robots really make big leaps forward in reliability and weapon power. And we thought we were going to make that leap also. We were kind of halfway there, I think, but it's like, you know, there's a luck factor into it. We didn't have enough time to test the full weapon system. And so we remember we were sweating bullets every time we were getting ready for a match. We're like, okay, we're going to go with one motor again. Okay, let's see if the weapon or the armor holds up this time, because Jackpot tore through. We only have two sets of armor, and Jackpot tore through the entire front end of our of our panel. So we're down to one, And we're like, okay, we're going to reinforce that one while another teammate fixes the first one. And hopefully we can get, if we go to that kamikaze mode against Bloodsport, we're pretty sure we're going to take some damage to that front part. Hopefully it holds up. But hopefully we get that first panel done in time before the fourth match, because that's going to be another nasty spinner.
Yes, absolutely.
So there's a lot of parallel efforts going on, just getting the robot ready and then fixing all the old stuff from the previous match at the same time to make sure you're ready for the next match, because that was really nice thing this season, knowing who you were going to fight ahead of time, because you can really start thinking ahead of time.
Yes, I would say that was definitely a big benefit this season. And then there's obviously so much more season to go. So nothing has been determined at this point, and we'll kind of see how things shake out. Now, I'm curious, since filming, and then there's still a lot up in the air about World Championship 8 and when that's going to happen. Is there anything else robot related that you have going on in the interim? Any like maker fair or anything like that, or are you just kind of working on Rotator here and there?
No other robotic competitions. I got my laptop here right next to me, working on Rotator. I call it 7.0 now. Spoiler alert, I'm deciding to design it all over again from scratch. And the idea is this one will look a little different. It'll be very noticeable, but there's always things to improve upon. And every year we always have this checklist of what broke or what bent or what just didn't go the way we wanted it to, or even what's annoying to take apart and put back in the robot to serviceability. And we're always making notes here, like even if it's annoying, I tell my team, like, just put it down like and list like what's annoying to you when working on the robot, or what could we change to make working on the robot faster. And we're always writing it down. And so it's also part of the exciting aspect of it. It's just designing, because you're like, the possibilities are endless. Like, okay, like, do we want to go with the same motors? Do we want to go with new motors? Like, keep in mind what happened last year. It's going to be a pain if you have to relearn a whole new tuning scheme. Like, stick with what you know, but let's see what's out there, because every year that's the brushless technology is really improving, and battery technology, and it's impressive how much power you can pack in these machines. So everyone always wants to get to 100, 200%, just go as far as you can with weapon power and dominate. And we're right there with everyone. We're trying to get better every year. So nothing going on. We're going to wait to hear what's going to happen with World Championship 8. I actually have news of my own, which is, if it's going to happen this year, unfortunately, Rotator will not be able to compete, because on my end, my wife and I are actually expecting a baby. She's 8 months pregnant. So April 29th is the due date. And so if they end up doing something in the summer, it's going to be too early for us. So I won't be able to attend to that. And my team has decided, let's wait for next year then, if they do film in 2023 now, World Championship 8. So we'll see if it happens that way. We'll take the year off to really design, build, test a lot more than last year, and get the robot really to 100% before competing again. But if it happens that they're going to film in 2024, then hopefully we'll be ready by then, and I'll have some spare time to go.
Well, congratulations. That's awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, I know the joys of having a child. Of course, mine is about to be 7 now. So that's, she's gonna be designing robots in a couple of years,
Excellent.
So.
Yeah. Yeah, if everything works out, we'll have a little tiny pit crew member attending in 2024.
That is terrific. Yeah, so that's really exciting.
Yeah.
And I now, since this is now apparently a tradition on my show, one thing I want to make sure everybody does is get a chance to say thank you to their sponsors. So please feel free to do that.
Yeah, so we're really thankful for our sponsor, which is the company we all work for in our team, Stryker. We're actually it's a big medical device company with a lot of different locations, And we all work in our Weston, Florida office, which is the robotics headquarters, because what our division does is we actually make robots for orthopedic surgery. And so we have this robot called the Mako that does, it assists the surgeon in making uni knees and total hip surgeries, and cutting the bone just perfectly enough so that the implants actually match in that anatomical geometry, so that there's a lot less wear over time, and there's actually less soft tissue damage because the robot's assisting the surgeon. They don't have to like open up so much. Like they don't need a huge incision to see what they're doing. The robot's helping them with that. So we're really thankful that they give us this opportunity to kind of like just nerd out with more robots.
Yeah, see, boys and girls, there's lots of really cool things you can do in robotics.
Yeah. We're all out on robotics in our facility, and so we're not making robots that help people during the day. We're making robots that fight other robots at night.
It's a good balance, you know,
Yeah.
helping people and doing cool things, you know, fighting robots. That's awesome.
Yeah, we're all learning. I call it an extreme team building activity, because it's people. It's funny when we're ready to ship out to Vegas and fly out. They're like, "Hey, have fun, you know, go enjoy yourself." And I'm like, "Yep, we're gonna enjoy our 16-hour days." Multiple 16-hour days. Like every time we have new team members, I try to rotate different employees to be on the team, because it's really cool experience for everyone to get. And say, so, just be ready. You're gonna be tired. You're not on vacation. Like, you're actually be working more here than you work back in the office. And it's funny, we experienced some team members this year that we're from Florida, South Florida, so it's very humid. We're used to like 80-90% humidity. It's very hot. Vegas, it's super dry. So we were all getting dehydrated very quickly and getting very tired. And we had team members literally, like, while we're servicing the robot, like dozing off, like standing up next to the robot. And we're like, you got to go sit down and take a break, because we got to make sure the team is doing well too. It's a lot of work.
Yeah. It's I mean, I can attest just from like my limited experience there this past season. It seems like a long day, and there's a lot of work to be done.
Yeah, and especially when you're trying to fix something in the robot that you can't really figure out. You're there at 8 a.m. You're there until midnight every day, and hoping something works.
Yes, absolutely. Well, it sounds like, you know, you may have at least a break for a while. So definitely, you know, enjoy the time once your child is born, and just, you know, soak it all up. But yeah,
totally different challenge now, but
yes, exactly. Those are also long days, but in a totally different way. Yeah. So, well, that is super exciting. You know, we'll see what happens with the next season and with the rest of this season. Obviously, still to finish airing, we have a couple of months of that, but thank you for coming on the show. Thank you for everyone that subscribes to the show. We're so close to hitting 500. I really want to do it. So if you haven't already subscribed, you know, please make sure that you subscribe. Keep sharing what you want to see on the show. We'll keep bringing the content, and we'll see everybody next time.
Excellent. Thank you for having me. Subscribe.
Yeah, subscribe.